Welcome to Achila Yona School of Yona series on YouTube. Be sure to check out my book, Discovering Genealogy, my Patreon account, and also check out my podcast. Now, since the introduction is over, let's get it cracking. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you're new here, welcome. Go ahead, hit the subscribe button and the bell button, all notifications to get notified when I upload a new video and when I post in my community tab. So, y'all, I may seem a little irate when I am speaking about this topic because I'm thoroughly pissed. Okay, I'm thoroughly pissed because not only because of the events that happened to our people, but because our people refuse to do the work and research to get the land that they claim that was stolen from them. Okay, because first of all, I'm tired of so many Black people spreading the narrative that their land was stolen, but yet don't want to do the genealogy research to actually see if that's even in their familial bloodline, to see if that's even their family story, that, that their land was stolen. Because let's be honest, not all Black Aboriginal people land was stolen. Some of y'all were just given away to them. Okay. Now, there are different levels of theft because you have coercion, you have lynchings, you have all these different things like police brutality too. Like those things did play a part into Aboriginal Indigenous people land being stolen. Now, with that being said, I have to bring this up that a lot of Aboriginal people were giving up that land for white acceptance. And I know some of y'all gonna be mad at me. You can be mad. You can click off this video. You can unsubscribe. But we got to talk about this because I'm tired of so many Black people spreading their. They're like, oh, our land is stolen. We can't do nothing. Yes, you can. Start doing your genealogy research. Start getting them documents together, and get you an attorney and go to court. The Bruce family, after how many years, were able to get their land back because their land was stolen during Jim Crow. Because if you're not aware, the USDA, Mississippi Delta, and Jim Crow laws all have a hand in Black Aboriginal American people land being stolen. All right, they all have a hand. I'm not going to talk too much about that in this video, but I do want to point out that, they are also the cause for Aboriginal people land being stolen. But at the same time, I want to point out something that my elder told me not too long ago. And I remember, you know, telling her about like pale people and how they still land and how they do this and how they do that. And she was looking at me, she's like, now, Yona, some of this is our people fault too. They abandoned their ways. They was selling their land for groceries. My elder told me too. She said, Yona, I'm sorry, but I'll get me a shotgun and kill a rabbit before I sell my land. And I had to ponder on that because I'm like, I understand where she's coming from, but at the same time, like, land was still stolen, blah, blah, blah. But also, too, I do feel like we have to take in accountability for us abandoning our indigenous ways. Because again, Aboriginal people own land, right? And we know Aboriginal people, or AKA Black American people, descend from Aboriginal people. So a lot of Black Americans took upon themselves to abandon their ways, because we cannot pretend like our elders and our ancestors wasn't, you know, drinking from the fountain of mayonnaise and was trying to get that white acceptance. So a lot of our elders and ancestors were abandoning their ancestral ways for white acceptance. They wanted to assimilate into white society. And my elder, she was saying, I'm talking about something that happened in 1930s. So I know some of y'all gonna be like, okay, what the Buffalo in 1800s? Well, right now specifically, I'm talking about what my elder is telling me what happened in the 1930s. She said in the 1930s, Negroes were selling their land for some groceries, and she said she wouldn't have done that. She would have just killed some rabbits, okay, and lived. Because let me tell you something, Texas Indians, we of a different breed. We had no problem pulling up to the colonizer doorstep and shooting up everybody. We had no problem doing that. I had pale teachers tell me stories about savage Indians coming and raiding white people homes and killing the fuck out of them. They did not give not nan one fuck. So that let me know, like, okay, if we had sense enough to still fight these colonizers, then obviously we have sense enough to still depend on our own survival skills too. So forgive me if I'm not entirely sympathetic to the whole black people land was stolen, because it wasn't always stolen. Some of y'all ancestors were just giving it up because, for one, they were clouded by the mayonnaise. They wanted to be seen and accepted by the mayonnaise. Because also too, we have to keep into account that black men were petitioning the government 5 times to be with a white woman. They petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court to be with a white woman 5 times. So you mean to tell me you can petition the government 5 times to be with a pale woman, but you can't petition the government to get that land back? For them not to kill off the food supply? Some don't seem right here. And not saying that our ancestors didn't do that, because our ancestors did fight tooth and nail with the government for them to do right by us. But at the same time, when we talk about 5 times, y'all, 5 times a black man was trying to dig off in some white coochie, knowing the state of his people, let alone himself, you have to put that into account as in why our land was being taken and stolen in the first place. Because niggas who only care about interracial relationships, they don't care if the land is stolen. Especially during that time period, they trying to be seen higher. They trying to be up the social ladder. That's why they was with white women anyway. Okay. So our people need to know what story fits them, because I know Aboriginal people land was stolen, okay? And I know ultimately, yes, from the tribes we come from, the land was stolen, because obviously look at where we at now. But for we to be like, oh, our land was stolen and blah blah blah, you need to know exactly where that comes from in your family story. And make sure you're able to back up those claims, because yes, we can sit here and say that our tribal lands were stolen, our ancestors' land was stolen, but you have to make sure, where does that fit in your family narrative? Was your land indeed stolen? Or was your ancestors just giving up for the free 99 because they didn't know how to take care of themselves anymore? They didn't know how to be self-sufficient anymore. And they didn't care to be self-sufficient anymore. Because a lot of Negroes were like that back in the day. A lot of Indian Negroes, they were just, y'all, over the years, our people were declining. And I hate to say it, but our people were declining. And we can sit here and be like, oh, well, they killed off the buffalo. So that caused them to coerce the Aboriginal people to say they land, blah, blah, blah. Look, I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, buffalo ain't the only source of food out here. Like I said, you got fish, you got deer, You got rabbits, squirrels, hogs, or should I say wild hogs? Because I have a lot of those around where I'm at. Hell, you can even eat some leaves, baby. I've been looking at some of these survival channels, and they talking about you can eat some leaves to survive. They be like, oh, the Native Americans, they eat these leaves. And I'm like, okay, so we can eat some leaves to survive. Then I'm not understanding what was the point of Aboriginal people giving up their land if if we know the land and we know how to survive. And the only reason I could come up with was for Aboriginal people to give up their land for some groceries is because they lost their ways of the people. Either it's because they were a slave and they lost contact with their family, or they were separated with their family, or just simply didn't give a fuck. Something happened along the lines where they could not fend for themselves. And so when shit hit the fan, they folded and they gave up their land. And that's just what it is. Because not every Aboriginal person out there family was affected by the Mississippi Delta, was affected by Jim Crow. And I'm not saying they was affected like at all. I'm sure they was affected to some degree, but to sit here and be like, oh, well, that's the main reason why, we just don't have land. I have to beg to differ, because the psychology of our people today is very telling. And I know we like to say, oh, well, back in the day we owned all this land and blah blah blah. But yeah, back in the day we did all this land, but how did we lose it? Because we started voting. We started trying to get that white acceptance and in that integration. Because everybody want to talk about how these pale people were using, USDA and Mississippi Delta and Jim Crow to steal land. But we also have to take accountability for ourselves, you guys. If a lot of our people were not so eager to abandon the ways of our people, we would not be in this predicament now. I want to point out this comment that was posted underneath my white man calls Native American man colonizer video. And he says, by contrast, I was called a colonizer in a lefty channel. This was my response. I'm a colonizer, LOL. Are you a person that has been colonized? I have family that moved to the Western US from Europe about 180 years ago. They set up a mercantile store on the Oregon Trail. They had to deal with uncivilized indigenous folks periodically. While tending to the store alone, one day my fourth great grandmother colonized an Indian that unwisely tried to play colonizers and Indians with her. He pulled a knife on her to show his dissatisfaction with the exchange value for his substandard furs. She then colonized him with an axe by chasing him out of her store with it. The other Indians in the store laughed. They laughed as one of their own attacked a woman, and then laughed as they saw him being defeated by a woman. People like this that barely have any semblance of a civilization, no written language, and no sense on how to appropriately behave when experiencing sticker shock are ripe for colonization. Now, I wanted to show this to y'all guys because number one, pale people have no remorse about being colonizers, because as you can see, this person is literally bragging about being a colonizer. And not only this, but I wanted to show y'all this story because this really expands my mind on why we were colonized in the first place. Because our people don't know how to have solitary with one another. Because most likely, this pale woman was trying to shortchange this Indian man on the furs that he was trying to sell her. Because remember, the fur trade was really big back then, and also the fur trade was also a big part of American Indian people demise. Remember that. I'm going to mention this later in the video, but I wanted to point this out because too many of our people think not standing with each other and standing up for each other is okay. And y'all want to sit here and cap for these pale people because you want them to come out to the cookout because you want to give them a cookout card and be like, oh, you good Nip, you come on out to the cookout. And see, this is why our people are going through what they're going through now, because niggas like that was laughing at people who are trying to get what they are owed from these pale people. And see, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the unity our people don't have with one another, because when I read comments like this, I'm like, man, this is exactly why our people are colonized to begin with. And listen, I know y'all probably hearing me talking about the whole fishing thing, and I know y'all gonna be like, Yona, you know they was enforcing fishing license on indigenous people. I get that, y'all. I understand that these people was trying to make it impossible for us to survive on our own. But when I read comments like this, I understand why Pale people got away with so much shit, because granted, he was coming at a woman for shortchanging him, but at the same time, there were other ways that this could have been resolved. The other indigenous people, they could have stepped in and be like, hey, you shouldn't shortchange my man like that. We don't have to be violent, but you should give this man what he is owed. But that ain't what happened. They laughed when he came at her, and they laughed when she overpowered him. And this is why our people are colonized, because there were Aboriginal people who were not with the shits, and there were Aboriginal people who were kissing the white man's ass. They had no problem eating the white man's ass either, let me tell you. Okay, I know I'm a little graphic right now, but I just have to say this because I'm not saying I don't have any sympathy for our ancestors that did get their land stolen because of the whole Mississippi Delta thing and Jim Crow thing and all the other stuff. I get that. And those things should have never happened, but they did happen. But what you can do to fight that is do your paper genealogy. I'm tired of Negroes coming online talking about, oh, we had our land stolen, we can't build nothing. Because that's why I even making this video in the first place. Because on my other page, I saw this man calling out other men and saying, hey, y'all need to stay out these women businesses and go build a house. And this dude said, how we gonna build a house when we don't own any land? It was stolen from us. And I'm like, you can get that back using genealogy documents. Like Poconoka is considered to be a Black Indian tribe, but they was able to get their land back. And then this fool gonna reply back saying, oh, well, that's just a small percentage. No, it's not a small percentage, person, dummy. Like, I'm trying not to be rude, y'all, but I'm just so tired of the freaking ignorance our people love to spew around. If you want to be unconquered buck, just say that. Just say that. Because for my elder to tell me that she ain't gonna give her land and she rather hunt a deer than to sell her land, that lets me know that she has more balls than most of these niggas out here. Because I'm tired of this whole conquer buck narrative, how we can't get our land back and how it's stolen. Yes, the fuck you can. You're just not trying to, dummy. And I know some of y'all be like, yo, no, don't be hard on this. I got to be, because I'm tired. All this speaking life into y'all ain't working. The only time when y'all seem to want to know and do better is when someone got the fire underneath your ass and holding you accountable. Then y'all want to be like, oh, well, I guess I gotta do something because I just can't wallow in sorrow. Yeah, you can't. I'm tired of Aboriginal people just saying, oh, well, it's the white man's fault. Like, we weren't contributing. I want to say we, because my people, they understood the assignment. Okay, we still got land to this day. So I'm not going to say we, but I will say some of your ancestors certainly did not understand the assignment. And they was too busy kissing white people asses to do something about the situation that they was in. And let me tell y'all something. A lot of y'all Christians and y'all Hebrew Israelites and y'all wee-wees on my page talking about Jesus and stuff, that's the exact reason why the land was stolen too, because y'all wanted to rely on the pale men to fix it. Because remember, we had Aboriginal people who were still aware of their Aboriginal roots, who had ties to the tribes and stuff like that. Then we had Aboriginal people who were completely assimilated. And even though they owned land, they pretty much abandon the ways of their people. And I mean, and there's levels to that, because you can own your own land and still know the way of your people, but still classified as a different people. And then you have the other side where they also reclassified as a different people, but they still aboriginal. And yet they're assimilated, but they're happy to assimilate. They're okay with being assimilated. And and they don't know the ways. Now granted, both may not say and practice the culture under the tribal name that they come from, but they could be both aware of the aboriginal identities that they come from, but they both chose not to embrace it to the full extent for whatever reason. And I'm not going to blame them for whatever reason, because we know how to we know how the colonizers got down, y'all. We know how they were killing aboriginal people just for saying that they were indigenous. So I get that. I'm not blaming my ancestors for that. I'm not blaming your ancestors for that, because our ancestors been through enough. I get that, you know. But at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and act like these fools wasn't over here happy to assimilate and was working double time and overtime to make sure that all the other Negroes were assimilating either. I really want our people to understand that we have to take accountability for the things that happen, y'all. The reason why we are in this situation is because we abandoned the ways of our ancestors. Y'all always want to come on my page talking about religion. No, try practicing the indigenous spirituality from the tribe that you claim you come from. How about that? Because enough with the whole Jesus and the Yahweh we and all the other stuff. Try practicing your Cherokee spirituality. Try practicing the Choctaw spirituality. Hell, I even have Choctaw and Cherokee spirituality on my YouTube premium membership. So there's really no reason why y'all are not reconnecting with the ways of our ancestors, or at least try to. Because with y'all making all these excuses to why we can't build, it's probably the same excuses our ancestors were saying to one another when the land was actually being stolen. And when they had to sell their land because they didn't know how to be self-sufficient. And I talked about this. I talked about this in my 5 facts about Yamasee Indian people video. I talked about that. The whole fur trade was utilized to keep us dependent on their ways, on their cultural customs. So yes, our people were indulging in self-sabotaging behavior. And look where it led us, because we were trying to keep up with the Jones. This is what happened. This is what happened when we tried to do the ways of pale people. We wanted to sit here and trade our goods with their goods, not knowing that their goods are actually useless. And they're making mad money off the fur that our ancestors were giving them. And remember, that's how I tell y'all, that's how the credit system was implemented and introduced to American Indian people. This is where the credit system comes from. And our ancestors actively participated in it until the Yamasee had enough and started retaliating against them, which eventually led to the freedom of, well, not really freedom, but the abolishment of American Indian slavery, which it didn't really end. I know, like we like to say it did end, but American Indian people were still enslaved though, and it didn't free the American Indian people who were already in chattel slavery. So even though it was illegal to, enslave American Indian people who were labeled American Indian on paper, but it took no effort to change them documents from Indian to Negro to enforce chattel slavery into them. That's why the whole one drop rule came into place too. Like, y'all, tools of oppression was used to steal our land and our resources. Now I don't know why are people still trying to use the one drop rule to justify people being Aboriginal or black. Like, No, 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 no. Leave those tools of oppression alone. Leave them at the door. Leave them at the door. No more, no more, no more. But like I said, I'm not blaming our ancestors. Well, I'm holding them accountable. I'm holding them accountable for how they could have really done things differently. But again, their back was to the wall, and I can't say what I would have done in a situation because I was not in their shoes. But at the same time, to just sit here and be like, "Oh well, they really had no choice because they were killing off the buffalo, blah blah blah," like bull crap. There are plenty of fish and food and leaves to eat. And you cannot tell me that American Indian people, Aboriginal people, quote unquote Black American people who know the way of the land, you cannot tell me that we did not know how to utilize the land to make sure that we can keep ourselves from starving. That makes no sense. Because for my elder who is completely assimilated into the system like we all are, and for her to be like, no, I would have just went into the woods and caught me a rabbit and call it a day. Like that lets me know, like, okay, if my elder can come up to this conclusion, then what's up with these ancestors then? So you have to take other things to account. Was it really because the pale people were doing all these things, or is it because our elders and our ancestors was assimilating? And they probably took it as an opportunity to assimilate because they're like, oh well, the white man, he just taking the land, and we can't find nothing to eat, so we just gonna share the land. What? What? Nah. You can't tell me as a black farmer, an aboriginal farmer, that you gonna sit here and give up your land because you need some groceries? Hey, baby, you got land. You tell me you can't find no deer, no squirrels, no turkeys, no nothing. And also this too, I want to point this out too, because we know aboriginal people were working together on trying to fight these, oppressors and stuff like that. But at the same time, I just feel like something was lacking here. Something is lacking. I know we didn't have the legal representation that we have now and all this other stuff, but for people to come to me and say, "Oh, well, they just sell the land for groceries because they had nothing to eat and it's the colonizers' fault," like we have to put some accountability on them too, because you are the original people of this land, and you mean to tell me you can't find no leaves to eat? You can't find no squirrels, no turkeys, no chickens, no nothing. Because they was bringing over different animals over here too. You mean to tell me that you're not going over to these pale people places and kill their cattle and bring that cattle over to where you at and take and I mean, I know it sounds risky and dangerous, but I mean, like, it just really points out to me, like, our people should have utilized and informed militias better. Because if things were that bad and they were coercing us to sell our land because they was killing off, the buffalo and stuff like that, then our people should have took it upon themselves to really just start killing off their resources and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that they did, but I'm just saying, like, to think of the psychology of our people in this time, because we had a lot of aboriginal people that were caping for these pale people and making excuses for them. And shoot, some of our people had no problem selling the land either. So that's all I have to really say, y'all. Y'all have to do your research. You have to do your research to even make sure that your land was stolen in the first place. Because we know tribal land was stolen, but for your individual family land being stolen, you're going to have to pull up documentation for that and go to court. Or otherwise, I'm going to need y'all to shut up. Because I'm tired of y'all talking about all this stuff and y'all not even trying to even right the wrongs that these motherfuckers did to our ancestors. I'm tired, and I know I'm cussing. Y'all gonna get mad in the comment section. I'm like, you cussing too much, but I don't give a damn. Cause I'm tired. I'm tired of the ignorance. I'm tired of our people making stupid and silly excuses to not do the work. I'm tired. I'm not gonna cuddle people anymore. I've been kind for a minute, ever since I've been, introduced into the, medications, I've been able to relax and control my psyche, more. But at the same time, y'all pushing it when y'all be coming to me with these defeatist attitudes and telling me, oh, well, we just had to sell the land because it was just. I get that. I get that our people were going through oppression, but at the same time, we have to point out the things that our elders and our ancestors are doing wrong, and we have to learn from their mistakes so we don't make those mistakes in the future, right? Because I'm not going to sit here and blame our ancestors for what pale people did. Pale people already came here on the bullshit. We already know that. But to sit here and say that, oh, well, we just had to sell our land to get them groceries. Excuse me. Excuse me. Mm, mm, mm. No, no, I don't want to hear that. Cause we ain't gonna act like we was only over here eating buffalo. You can't. You won't tell me you can't find a little pond to fish out of. And see, this is the thing too. If starvation was really getting so bad, why wasn't I mean, I'm pretty sure there was Aboriginal people out there that were, stealing cattle and trying to um, rally up some fish, to feed to the community and stuff like that. So I'm not saying like our people wasn't actively working on, getting things fixed and trying to better the situation of our people. But to sit here and be like, oh well, they just killing off the buffalo and we ain't got no groceries, so we just gonna sell the land. That just don't care. I don't comprehend that. I don't comprehend that because America is abundant with all types of animals. Okay, and you could go on the nature channels and they always talking about how the Native Americans ate this and that. So you telling me that you telling me that we had to sell our land to get groceries because they was just coercing us to sell our land? Hmm. That lets me know that our people were abandoning the ways of the people. Because if you can sell your land just for some groceries, that says a lot. That says a lot. That tells me that you probably were beginning to abandon or already abandon the culture and the ways of your people, and you selling your land for groceries is just the mere consequences for you trying to keep up with the Joneses. But anyway, I know some of y'all gonna get mad at me in the comment section and saying that I'm blaming Aboriginal people and all this other stuff. Look, I'm an Aboriginal person myself. Okay, my grandmother is a descendant of a full-blooded Cherokee woman. Okay, and then also too, I have some ancestors from Mexico on my mother's side too as well. So to sit here and say that, oh, we just had to give up our land because we was hungry and like that just don't make no sense to me. That just don't make no sense to me. And that makes me question our people like what what was going on between us for us to not have each other back like that? For us so we don't have to sell our land for some groceries. So we have to take things into accountability, y'all. Like I'm not placing all the blame on our ancestors because again, we are being terrorized in our own homeland. We going through excessive amounts of terrorism on our own homeland. It is what it is. But at the same time, to sit here and be like, oh well, the land was stolen, so there's nothing we can do. I'm not believing that for 1 second because if the Bruce family and the Poconoke tribe is able to get their land back, then goddamn it, you are too. But first, you got to make sure that's even in your family story to begin with. So that's all I really have to say. Let me know what y'all thoughts are in the comment section. Thank y'all guys so much for your support, and until the next time,